Let me tell you something, it's not the world you need to stop running from. It's not people. It's not your circumstances. It's not even your past mistakes. What you've really been running from is yourself. And you know it. You've been running from the truth that stares back at you in the mirror. From the version of yourself that knows you were made for more. From the voice inside that whispers, you're better than this. But instead of listening, we turn up the noise, we distract ourselves, we fill the silence with anything and everything to avoid facing the one person we can't escape ourselves. We're scared of the silence because silence makes us sit with truth. It brings up the unresolved, the unhealed, the uncomfortable. So we run, we stay busy, we overcommit, we scroll endlessly, we keep people around who don't pour into us, just so we're not alone with our own thoughts. Because when it gets quiet, when everything slows down, the truth's down. Speak. And that truth doesn't lie. It knows your patterns. It knows your pain. It knows when you're smiling in public but crumbling in private. But hear me, there is no breakthrough without a breakdown. And there is no freedom without first facing what's been holding you hostage. You cannot conquer what you refuse to confront. Running only delays the healing. Avoidance only strengthens what you're trying to escape. And as long as you keep running, you will never fully step into the person you were born to become. You were not created to live beneath your calling. You were not placed on this earth just to survive, to get by, to coast. That fire in your gut, that restlessness in your spirit, that's your soul telling you stop running, stop hiding. I'm still here. I've been waiting on you. You don't need to have it all figured out to face yourself. You just need the courage to sit still long enough to hear what you've been avoiding. That's where the power is, in the pause. In the moment you finally get tired of running in circles and say, enough, I want more. Let me ask you something, how long are you going to keep avoiding the mirror? How long are you going to keep dressing up pain with perfection? How long will you keep wearing a mask while your soul suffocates underneath? At some point, you got to decide to stop being a prisoner of your past and start being the protector of your future. That begins by facing yourself, facing your patterns, facing your fears, facing that part of you that sabotages opportunities because deep down you don't think you're worthy of them. But I came to tell you you are worthy, even with the mistakes, even with the broken pieces, even with the doubts, the failures, the insecurities. You are not beyond redemption. You are not too far gone. You are still here. And if you're still here, there's still purpose in you. There's still time to choose a new path. But that path starts with honesty. It starts with vulnerability. It starts with the decision to stop running and start healing. You don't have to fix it all today, but you do have to stop pretending it doesn't exist. You don't have to be perfect to be in the process. You just have to be present. Present enough to say, I'm not okay, but I want to be. Present enough to look yourself in the mirror and say, we're going to unsee through this together. Because when you face yourself, you find your strength. When you stop running, you start rebuilding. And when you stop hiding, you step into healing. So today, make the choice, not for them, not for appearances, but for you. The real you, the one buried underneath the noise, the pressure, the pretending. That version of you is still in there, still fighting, still holding on. Give that version of you a chance to rise. Because once you stop running from yourself, you'll realize you had the power all along. The battle ends the moment you decide to stop running down. Let me tell you something powerful. There's strength in stillness. But we've been conditioned to believe that the only way to win is to keep moving, keep grinding, keep pushing. So we don't stop, we don't rest, we don't reflect. We just go until life forces us to slow down. Until we hit that wall. Until we break. And by the time we do, we're so disconnected from ourselves, from our purpose, from our peace, that we don't even know who we are anymore. But listen to me, there comes a time in your life when your next breakthrough doesn't come from doing more. It comes from having the courage to stop. Stopping isn't quitting. Stopping isn't weakness. Stopping isn't failure. Stopping is wisdom. It takes strength to say, wait a minute, let me reevaluate. Let me listen. Let me breathe. It takes courage to admit that the path you're on may no longer serve the person you're becoming. And it takes faith to believe that stillness won't slow you down, it'll align you. See, the problem is we're addicted to motion, even if it's the wrong direction. We'd rather be busy than be still. We'd rather be distracted than be real. Because if we stop for too long, we might have to sit with some things. We might have to confront some truths. We might have to own some decisions. And for many of us, that's scarier than exhaustion. But if you don't stop and check in with yourself, you'll burn out chasing something that isn't even meant for you. You'll wear yourself thin trying to keep up an image that was never yours to carry. You'll wake up one day with success on paper but no peace in your heart. And I don't know about you, but that's not the life I want. I don't want to move fast if I'm moving away from who I really am. I don't want to win on the outside while I'm losing on the inside. There is divine direction in the pause. When you stop, you give yourself space to listen, to reflect, to discern. And that's where clarity lies. That's where healing starts. That's where purpose reveals itself. But you'll never hear the whispers of your soul if you never quiet the noise. You'll never see the signs if you're always speeding through life. Sometimes God doesn't change your situation, He changes you through the situation. But you'll miss the lesson if you never slow down long enough to learn it. I want you to think about a time in your life where you just kept going even though everything inside you was begging you to pause. Maybe it was a relationship you knew wasn't right, but you stayed. Maybe it was a job that drained you, but you were scared to leave. Maybe it was a pattern of behavior that you knew was hurting you, but it was familiar, so you kept going. We've all been there. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop and say, this isn't working. And I deserve better. Stopping isn't the end, it's the beginning. It's the start of a deep awareness. It's the beginning of a new direction. It's the birth of a new you. But that version of you can only emerge when you step out of autopilot and into intentional living. When you stop letting life happen to you and you start choosing how you show up. You don't have to chase everything that glitters. You don't have to prove your worth through your pace. You are enough, even in the stillness. You are valuable, even in the quiet. And sometimes your next level won't come from fighting harder. It'll come from surrendering faster. So pause. Reflect, reconnect. Don't be afraid to stop and listen, because in the silence you'll remember who you are. You'll remember what matters. And you'll be reminded that the greatest strength often comes not from moving, but from knowing when it's time to stand still. Sometimes the most powerful move you can make is to stop. We live in a world that glorifies the hustle. We're constantly being told that if we're not grinding, we're falling behind. That if we're not doing something every minute of every day, we're wasting time. And so we keep pushing. We keep striving. We keep saying yes to opportunities, to people, to obligations until our plates are overflowing and our souls are running on empty. But let me tell you something real. Sometimes the power isn't in adding more. Sometimes the true strength comes from the ability to stop before you burn out. Burnout doesn't always come with warning signs. It creeps in slowly. You start feeling a little more tired than usual, but you push through. You start feeling disconnected from the things you once loved, but you tell yourself it's just a phase. You feel irritated, overwhelmed, or numb, but you keep going because you think rest is something you'll get to eventually. And then one day you wake up and realize you're not just tired, you're depleted. You're not just overworked, you're empty. And no amount of success is worth that. See, there's a difference between being productive and being stretched too thin. You weren't created to run nonstop. You weren't designed to pour into everyone else while leaving yourself dry. You have limits. And those limits aren't weaknesses, they're wisdom. But most of us don't acknowledge them until it's too late. We think we can outrun exhaustion. We think we can outwork emptiness. But the truth is, if you don't choose to rest, your body will choose it for you. Your mind will choose it for you. Your spirit will sit you down when you refuse to sit yourself down. And this is why it's so important to recognize the power to stop before you reach that breaking point. Before you say yes to one more thing, ask yourself, is this going to cost me my peace, my presence, my passion? Because not every tootie is meant to be taken. Is meant to be taken is yours to carry. Just because something is good doesn't mean it's good for you in this season. And it takes maturity to understand that saying no to something doesn't make you lazy, it makes you aligned. Let me speak to those of you who feel guilty resting. Those who feel like if you're not constantly moving, you're failing. That's a lie. You deserve rest. You deserve time to breathe, to exist without constantly proving yourself. Rest is not a reward, it's a requirement. You don't need to earn your right to pause. You're allowed to stop, to regroup, to prioritize your well-being. Because a burned out version of you can't give your best to anything, not your work, not your family, not your purpose. There is power in protecting your energy. There is strength in knowing when to step back. And there is wisdom in choosing long-term peace over short-term approval. You don't have to keep performing for people who only love you for what you do. You don't have to exhaust yourself for systems that will replace you in a heartbeat. You are not a machine. You are a human being with emotional, spiritual, and physical needs, and if you don't tend to them, you will suffer silently while the world keeps spinning. You owe it to yourself to recognize the signs, to listen to the whisper before it turns into a scream. When your body is aching for rest, when your mind feels foggy, when your soul feels distant, don't ignore those alarms. That's your inner self waving a red flag saying, hey, slow down, take care of me. And you don't need a breakdown to justify your need for a break. The world will try to make you feel like stopping is falling behind. But I'm here to tell you stopping is what sets you free. Free from expectations that aren't yours to carry. Free from cycles of burnout. Free from the pressure to be everything to everyone. And in that freedom, you'll find clarity. You'll find peace. You'll find yourself again. Because you don't just deserve to succeed, you deserve to be well while doing it. You deserve to thrive, not just survive. So if you're feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders, if you're on the edge of burnout, if you're tired of pretending that everything is okay when it's not, give yourself permission to stop. Just for a moment, just long enough to catch your breath. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do for your future is to rest in your present. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't what's happening around you, it's what's happening within you. It's not always the people trying to tear you down or the challenges standing in your way. No, often the most destructive force in our lives is the voice inside our head that we haven't learned to quiet. That critic that keeps whispering you're not enough. You're too late. You don't have what it takes. And what happens when we don't take the time to stop and confront those inner conversations? We start believing them. We start living by them. And slowly we shrink our dreams to fit the size of our doubt. That's why the power to stop isn't just about stopping the hustle or the noise around you. It's about stopping the self-sabotage. Stopping the spiral of overthinking. Stopping the habits that keep you circling the same mountain year after year. Because if you don't pause to evaluate the internal stories running your life, you'll continue making choices that align with who you used to be instead of who you were created to become. See, we all have patterns. Some we've picked up from childhood, some from trauma. Some from the environment we grew up in. And those patterns, if left unchecked, will lead us into cycles of fear, procrastination, perfectionism, comparison cycles that just keep us stuck. They keep us small. And the only way to break those cycles is to stop long enough to recognize them, to become aware, to say, wait a minute, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep settling? Why do I talk myself out of my own greatness every time opportunity knocks? You can't heal what you won't confront. You can't transform what you refuse to face. So if your automatic response to opportunity is to doubt yourself, it's time to stop. If your go-to emotion is fear, it's time to stop. If your instinct is to withdraw every time things get uncomfortable, it's time to stop. Not because you're broken, but because you're ready. Ready to grow. Ready to level up. Ready to rewrite the script that's been holding you back for far too long. Stopping isn't failure, it's strategy. It's intelligence. It's wisdom. It's saying, I'm going to pause long enough to understand the root of what's been driving me. Because when you don't stop to reflect, you keep reacting. And reaction is not the same as alignment. Reaction keeps you bouncing between survival and survival sabotage. But stopping creates space for clarity. It creates space for intention. It gives you room to choose differently, to live differently, to become different. And maybe that's what someone needs to hear right now, that it's okay to choose different. It's okay to pause and say, this version of me isn't serving where I'm going. That's not weakness, that's evolution. That's growth. That's what it looks like to take your power back. To say, I don't have to be who I've always been. I get to stop. I get to reset. I get to grow. But that can't happen until you get honest. Honest about your patterns. Honest about your fears. Honest about what you've been avoiding by staying busy. Because busyness can become a distraction. A way to avoid dealing with the things you know you need to face. That's why stopping is so hard, because when everything gets quiet, the truth gets loud. And sometimes we don't want to hear it. But truth is the beginning of transformation. And transformation is what you're really after. You weren't put here to stay in cycles. You weren't born to live on autopilot. You were created with purpose, with intention, with something powerful to offer this world. But you can't access that power if you're constantly running from yourself. Stop running. Stop distracting. Stop ignoring the inner work that's calling your name. Because once you stop and face the truth, something amazing happens. You start taking ownership. You start making decisions from a place of clarity, not chaos. You start creating momentum from the inside out. And when your internal world shifts, everything in your external world starts aligning with it. So don't be afraid to pause. Don't be afraid to feel. Don't be afraid to ask yourself the hard questions. That's where the shift begins. That's where the old story loses its power. That's where the new version of you starts to rise. And when that new version shows up, there's no going back, Doc. One of the most powerful decisions you will ever make is the decision to walk away from things that no longer serve you. It sounds simple, right? But when you've been tied to something for a long time, a relationship, a mindset, a job, even a version of yourself, it takes incredible strength to say this no longer fits where I'm going. Most people don't realize that sometimes the breakthrough doesn't come from trying harder or pushing through. It comes from stopping, from stepping back, from letting go. Letting go isn't quitting. It's not giving up. Letting go is clarity. It's wisdom. It's the ability to discern what's growing you and what's only draining you. And the truth is, there are some situations you're trying to fix that were never meant to be fixed. They were meant to be finished. But because we're afraid of what comes next, we hold on longer than we should. We hold on out of habit. We hold on because it's familiar. We hold on because we've convinced ourselves that walking away means failure. But I'm here to tell you, walking away from what no longer aligns with your future is not failure, it's faith. It's faith in something better. It's faith that if you release what's no longer right, something right will find you. But you've got to stop settling in places where your spirit feels heavy. You've got to stop pretending that just because it's not breaking you, it's building you. No, some things are simply keeping you busy so you don't pursue what's truly meant for you. And the longer you stay, the more it chips away at your confidence, your energy, your identity. Sometimes the real test is not how much you can endure, but how quickly you recognize when something is over. Because we all get to that place where we know, deep down we know, we feel it. That nudge, that inner discomfort, that still voice that says you're shrinking to stay here. You're playing small to keep the peace. You're sacrificing your future to hold on to your past. And if you ignore that voice long enough, it becomes easier to accept the pain than to risk the unknown. But let me ask you, what if the very thing you're afraid to let go of is the weight that's been keeping you grounded when you were meant to soar? What if your next level is waiting on the other side of a goodbye? You can't take old baggage into a new season. You can't carry people, patterns, or perspectives that are out of alignment with your calling and expect to step into purpose freely. Something has to go. Something has to be released. And sometimes that something is comfort. Comfort zones are beautiful, but nothing ever grows there. And yet we cling to them. We build homes in places God only meant to be a hallway. And the more we decorate those hallways, the more we convince ourselves that this is it, this is all there is. But it's not. You weren't created to settle. You weren't built for average. There is more. There is better. But you can't experience it until you're willing to walk away from what's just good enough. And I get it, walking away hurts. Even when it's the right thing, even when it's necessary. You grieve not just the loss, but the dreams you attach to it. The expectations. The time, the effort, but growth demands sacrifice. And nothing meaningful is ever gained without letting go of something that once felt meaningful too. So ask yourself, is this feeding my future or just fueling my fear? Is this relationship pushing me forward or keeping me stuck? Is this opportunity stretching me or suppressing me? When you stop long enough to ask those questions, you'll begin to see with fresh eyes. You'll begin to understand that staying loyal to your evolution sometimes means being willing to disappoint other people. It means saying no to what you once said yes to. It means choosing your peace over your pride. You were not put here to live your life in circles. You were not put here to stay stuck in cycles. You were not put here to survive through every season. You were put here to thrive. And if you want to thrive, you have to stop glorifying endurance in places where you're meant to exit. You have to stop worshiping loyalty to what's been when your destiny is pulling you into what's next. There is power in knowing when to stop. Power in trusting that the exit is not the end, it's the entrance to something greater. So don't be afraid to walk away when you know deep in your soul that where you are is no longer where you're supposed to be. Because peace follows obedience. There comes a time when you have to realize that everything you're carrying, every burden, every regret, every fear can't go with you where you're going. You've got to make a decision to release it. Because if you don't, you'll be too weighed down to step into what's next. See, too many people try to move forward while dragging everything from the past behind them. But growth doesn't work that way. Elevation requires separation. You can't rise while holding on to what was never meant to stay. Some people are stuck, not because they're incapable, not because they're unworthy, but because they're unwilling to let go. They're holding on to anger, resentment. People who left, opportunities that didn't pan out, mistakes they made, or pain they never processed. And they wonder why it feels so hard to move forward, why every step feels heavy. It's because they're not just carrying the present, they're carrying the past too. There's a point in your journey when you must forgive, not for them, but for you. Not because what happened was okay, but because your healing matters more than your history. When you refuse to forgive, you stay tied to what hurt you. You keep replaying the same scenes over and over again in your mind, hoping the ending will somehow change. But it won't. What's done is done. You can't rewrite the chapter, but you can choose to close the book and start a new one. And sometimes it's not about forgiving others, sometimes it's about forgiving yourself. For not knowing better, for staying too long, for settling, for breaking your own heart while trying to make someone else whole. You've got to show yourself the grace you so freely give to everyone else, because guilt and shame are chains and no one runs free with chains around their ankles. Letting go also means releasing control. And that's hard for many of us. We want to control the outcome, control how people see us, control the timeline. But that's not how life works. You can't control how people respond. You can't control when or how your breakthrough shows up. What you can control is how you respond. You can control whether you choose to let faith lead or let fear paralyze you. There is peace on the other side of surrender. Not giving up, but letting go. There's a difference. Giving up is rooted in defeat. Letting go is rooted in wisdom. It says, I trust that what's for me won't miss me, and what misses me was never meant for me. That kind of trust isn't easy. It requires you to loosen your grip on what you thought life should be and open your hands to what it could be. You can't enter a new season carrying an old mindset. You can't step into purpose dragging along broken pieces from a place you were only meant to pass through. There's a reason why the windshield is bigger than the rearview mirror. Because where you're going is more important than what's behind you. But if you keep looking back, you'll miss what's right in front of you. There's something powerful about finally deciding this doesn't define me anymore. The pain happened, but it doesn't get to narrate your story. The disappointment came, but it doesn't get to dictate your destiny. You are not what you went through. You are what you choose to rise from. And the rise begins with release. You have to be brave enough to say goodbye to what broke you. You have to believe that your healing is more valuable than your history. That your future is more important than your fear. You don't need closure to move forward. You don't need every answer, every apology, every explanation. You just need the courage to walk away from what's been weighing you down and say, this ends with me. There's power in traveling light, in choosing freedom over familiarity, in choosing peace over proving a point. You don't have to keep explaining your pain to people who were never meant to understand it. You don't have to justify your growth to those who are committed to misunderstanding you. Just let it go. Not because they deserve it, but because you do. Sometimes we think holding on makes us strong. But true strength is in release. It's in saying, I don't need to carry this anymore. And when you do that, when you finally drop the weight, something happens. You feel lighter. You feel clearer. You feel free. Because real power is in the release.